Oh my gosh, I'm so tired. Okay. I don't know how I'm tired. I haven't left the house in a month. Hold on. Let me draw up the energy for this. Hello everyone. Welcome to episode 325 of the Juicebox Podcast. Today's guest is Mike. I met Mike on Instagram. He has type 1 diabetes and an interesting story. That's what got him on the show. And while you're listening to Mike, remember that his story is brought to you by advertisers like Dexcom, Omnipod, the Contour Next One blood glucose meter, and Touched by Type 1. Find out more about the Dexcom G6 continuous glucose monitor at dexcom.com/juicebox. Get yourself a free, no-obligation demo of the Omnipod tubeless insulin pump at myomnipod.com/juicebox. Dig into what the Contour Next One blood glucose meter is and see if you're eligible for a free meter at contournextone.com. And of course, my absolute favorite diabetes organization, Touched by Type 1, is their name plus.org, touchedbytype1.org. I want to thank everyone for continuing to listen to the show during the coronavirus lockdown. The numbers for this show, the downloads that is, have not changed since the coronavirus has come about, but I've heard from some other people who have other podcasts that their shows are struggling. This means the world to me. Thank you very much. All right, some music and then Mike. I honestly didn't know where this conversation was going to go when we began having it, but Mike and I had a lot in common. Mike is an adult living with type 1 diabetes. He has specific experience growing up in a culture with diabetes. He's a young man who enjoys some similar music to me. And I like his outlook on life and what he's trying to accomplish. All that turned into a lovely hour. While you're listening to that hour, please remember that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Please always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. In this little bit of time I have here, I'd like to remind you that while you're locked up at home, don't think of it as being locked up, think of it as safe at home. But anyway, while you're locked up at home, it's a perfect time to work on your blood sugars. Go back and listen to the pro tip episodes again. They begin at episode 210. They take you all of a day and a half maybe to listen and put the ideas into action. So if your blood sugars have been getting out of whack, it might be time to, tighten them back down again.
This is Michael. Some of you guys know me on Instagram as Glucose Gang Mike. Since I'm not a father, let me say I'm a son, brother, uncle, somewhat of a parent, not in the biological sense. In regards to this podcast, I am a type 1 diabetic that has had this disease for 20 years.
How old are you?
I'm 27.
Wow, 7 years old? That seems to be a popular diagnosed number for people I'm talking to this week. I kid you not, you're the third person who said to me, I was diagnosed when I was 7. Maybe it's a good year for diabetes, like, when they talk about wine. But who knows? 7 years old, 20 years ago. You're 27 now. Go to college?
Yeah, so I graduated from the University of Michigan in 2017, and I moved from Michigan to North Carolina, and that is currently where I reside.
Did you, where were you born?
I was born and raised in a place called Ypsilanti, Michigan, but I went to, my family is from Ypsilanti, Michigan. So I know people throughout Ann Arbor as well as Ypsilanti. And Ypsilanti is spelled funny, so people have a hard time pronouncing it. It's Ypsilanti. So yeah.
You just said it so naturally. How do people mispronounce it?
Ypsilanti, or they emphasize the yips.
The yips. I think you might have just named this episode of the podcast the yips, Mike, but we'll see where the rest of it goes. So, all right. So, born and raised, go to school there. What took you to North Carolina?
I have family down here. So I have 2 sisters that stay down here, and I wanted to get out of Michigan. The joke in Michigan is always the running joke when you're a teenager is always like, oh, when I turn 18, I'm catching the first plane out of here, and I'm moving, and this and that, and that was ideally my plan, but I didn't want to leave Michigan without something tangible. So I decided to get my degree first, and then I went ahead and left.
Excellent. That makes a lot of sense to me. This is interesting. When you moved after college, did you have a job set up, or did you just think, I'm going to go to North Carolina and reset my life here with this, degree and this new person that I am?
No, I didn't have any job offers at the time. I was just kind of, jumping out of the plane with no parachute, so to speak. And I went ahead and I did it. And, I don't regret it. Things kind of fell into place, thankfully for me. But when I first got here, it was kind of hard.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have a car, didn't have a job. So I had a bike, and I would bike around Durham. And, eventually I got a job. And with me getting a job, I got a car. So that was great. And things just kind of fell into place.
It's excellent. How did you work out medical support, health insurance, getting insulin and supplies, stuff like that, between school and getting your first job?
Well, I had an idea. I didn't know what was going to happen. So like a lot of people, I tried to stock up on my supplies before I went ahead and graduated and, made the move down to North Carolina. But like a lot of people that I'm sure you've spoken to, at times I did have to ration my insulin,
mm-hmm.
Just to make sure that, I had enough, if necessary.
And so it's because I guess when you're in college, I guess depending on your situation, if your parents have health insurance, you can stay on their health insurance while you're in college. But the minute you're, whatever the phrasing is for, what happens when you graduate legally to you, you're just gone then. Like they can't cover you anymore. Stuff's expensive. So you just sort of turned into a little bit of a hoarder, held on to as much as you could, and then went and tried your thing. And then it was I guess a race to get a job before you ran out of insulin.
Absolutely.
The worst game show ever, Mike, by the way.
Hey, man. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do. I don't even think my parents knew that, but now, once they listen to this, they'll know.
They'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Would you say that, how often did you think about that while you were trying to get going? And was it on your mind constantly, or did you every once in a while open up the refrigerator and look at that insulin and think, well, maybe I'm going to have to take a job I don't want soon? Or how did that impact your life?
It was definitely stressful. For someone like me, where I'm constantly on the go, I'm constantly somebody who has to, I can't sit in the house and just relax.
Mm-hmm.
So with activity comes corrections and blood sugar drops and, all of those different things that affect your diabetes. So for me, there definitely was a bit of a rush. And in addition to all of that, I also just, I like the idea of working. So there was a bit of a rush to go ahead and find a job, but thankfully one came through. I think I got hired maybe a month after I moved down here. As I moved down here August 2017, and then I got a job in September. Yeah, I want to say the end of September. So it worked out.
That's amazing.
Thankfully.
Yeah. Hey, I have one last question about this. When you talk about when you hear people say I have to ration my insulin because I don't have enough, what's that look like like nuts and bolts. Do you just aim for a higher blood sugar so you use less insulin, or do you skip meals? Do you eat low carb or no carb when you don't want to? Like, how does that kind of take shape?
So for me, especially when I was younger, I had to but I discovered different ways to somewhat maintain and also obviously drop my blood sugar. And if you want to raise it, you just eat a bunch of sugar, right? So that was not a problem. But for me, it was more so, like you said, eating healthy. So eating less carbs, maybe like salad instead of bread. It included things like cardio. Cardio really, really helped my A1C. And also, man, just from my personal 20 years of experience, if I constantly drink water and I don't eat anything crazy, then my blood sugar relatively stays the same. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's just exclusive to my body and how my hormones work, but just constantly drinking water. Like I said, I'm drinking a Fiji water throughout the day. That's like my thing. And that really helps to maintain and regulate my blood sugar.
It's interesting that you said that, because I sat down with a 20-year-old guy last night, and he was looking to understand what we talk about on the podcast, and I know him personally, and so we went to dinner and sat in a restaurant. Like, he sort of got the talk that I do in public, but he got it in a restaurant. And I at some point asked him, so you got this 190 blood sugar, what do you usually do? And he's a person just managing with a meter and pens, And he said, I'd probably drink some water. And I said, would you correct it with insulin? And that was a completely foreign idea to him, because he's had diabetes for about 7 years, and no one's ever talked to him about correcting a blood sugar. He's been told, to count his carbs, give himself insulin, wait 3 hours. And, by the time that happens, you're hungry again anyway, and you start the process all over again. But he had never considered the idea of pushing that number down with insulin. But immediately he said, I would drink water. And, and then if it doesn't move, probably work out. And I thought, I know it works, but I've never heard anybody say that as like their go-to idea. And then just now you said the same thing. So kind of took me by surprise for a second. All right. So 7 years old, Mike, when you're diagnosed then, do you have any real recollection of that? It's a long time ago.
Oh my gosh. Scott, are you calling me old?
No, I'm just saying 20 years is a long time ago. By the way, I'm going to turn, what is today's date? Is today like the 11th? The 10th.
July 10th.
In 2 days, I turned 48. So I have 20 years on your 20 years. So I'm not calling you old. But I'm just saying that 20 years is a long time ago. Because if you ask me something that happened to me when I'm 28, I'm pretty sure I don't remember. And I was an adult then. So I'm wondering, just do you have recollection of being 7 and being diagnosed, and what that was like, if you do?
I have, to answer your question, I have brief glimpses and flashes. I remember, it's a funny story, and I'm going to break it down for you. So I was on a cruise ship with my family, and there is, including my parents, 4 brothers and sisters, so there's 7 of us, right, on this cruise ship. Mm-hmm. And we're all having a good time. Everybody's, celebrating. I think it was my older brother's 15th birthday. And, we're just having a good time. And I ate something at dinner, and I just had to use the bathroom. Yeah. And I used the bathroom, and then I felt like I had to use the bathroom again. And so I used the bathroom again, and I did it. I felt the sensation again. So I'm constantly using the bathroom, and I just remember being very, very thirsty and asking my mom for a lot of water, and it never quenching my thirst. And my mom, before the end of the trip, she was like, I think something's wrong. We need to take you to the doctor. Mm-hmm. And so I remember, because my brother, ironically, my brother's birthday just passed. His birthday was in July 7th. Yeah. So, yeah, so we got on the cruise. So I want to say after we got off the cruise, I want to say I went to the doctor in August. That's when they diagnosed me, and they were like, he has diabetes. And my mom was like totally blown away, and my dad too.
Yeah.
They were both just like, how is that possible? Like, he's 7 years old, he's healthy, he's not, obese or overweight. And my endo at the time was like, there's different types of diabetes, and he has what's known as juvenile diabetes, is what they called it back then.
Yeah.
Type 1 is what they call it now. And
well, I'm happy to hear, like, I'm happy to hear that you went to a doctor off the boat, because in my mind you were like seeing that Love Boat doctor in those short shorts with the glasses on, and I thought, what could he possibly know about type 1? The other thought I had when you said you were on a cruise was, were you just cruising around Lake Michigan, or did you fly somewhere and then go in the ocean? I'm assuming it was an ocean cruise.
Absolutely.
It's like, those super famous Michigan cruise lines. And I realize you can fly somewhere and get on a cruise. It just struck me when you said it. I had a picture of you on a cruise boat as a child, like rolling around the Lake Michigan over and over again. But so it's interesting because it just kind of hit you that your brother's birthday is this month. So this is July is probably the anniversary of when you figured it out, and August is, I guess, the anniversary of when someone told you, for sure that you had it.
My diversary, as they like to say on Instagram. I don't know the actual date. I'd have to ask my parents that. I don't know if they even remember, but I know that it was like fall, because we were getting ready to go back to school, and the leaves were changing and different things. I also remember them telling me, you know what I mean? Like, I remember going to like the U of M hospital, and them, hospitalizing me, of course, and, telling me what the disease was and different things. And I feel like it was maybe the second or the third day. And they came into my bedroom because, they check your blood sugar like every 2 or 3 hours when you're recently diagnosed.
Right.
And they came into my room, and the nurse was like, okay, it's time to take your shot. And I remember just being like, no, like, no. And she was like, Michael, come on. Like, we have to, this is, you know what I mean? We have to get, and I was like, no.
Yeah.
And I remember very vividly, I remember this crystal clear, like, fighting the nurse and the doctors had to run, like, come in, like something out of a movie almost, where you're like, you see this little 7-year-old kid who doesn't want to accept the fact that he has a chronic illness. I'm stressed out because I'm like, I don't want to, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
your blood sugar's all over the place too.
Life. What'd you say?
I said your blood sugars are all over the place too. Like, there's a lot impacting your behavior besides just the fact that you're 7 and scared out of your mind. Some lady's trying to jab you with a needle. And, I can't wrap my head around it completely because Arden was 2. So we didn't really have to explain that much to her. Do you know what I mean? Like, we did. Obviously, we talked her through what was happening, but she didn't cognitively think to herself, oh, I have diabetes now. And, it's different when you're younger, but when you're younger, but at an age where you can understand some, but not all of it, it just has to be, it has to be the most frightening thing that's ever happened to you, I would imagine.
No doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Yeah. Listen, I watched one time, like, my son was, 8, 9 years old, getting a flu shot. And luckily, out of the corner of my eye, I saw what was going on. And this is not like a violent kid. Like, I had to reach up and grab his hand because when the nurse came at him, he was going to defend himself. It was really just a gut like reaction to him. He's like, if you're going to try to stab me with that, I'm going to try to stop you. And so, I'm with you, man. I would have maybe thrown some hands too at the lady.
Had to let her know.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not the one.
You go find another Mark because Mike's not getting jabbed with whatever that is.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know what your sick game is, honey, but anyway. So, but 20 years ago, you must have done injections for a long time, right?
Oh man, that was like, yeah. So like, I'm a dinosaur at this point when it comes to like how to give insulin and get insulin. So yeah, we were doing, like you said, this. I remember the syringes with the orange needle caps and the vials and shaking up the vials, and you have to draw up the insulin with the syringe, and the syringe has the tick marks on it. That was the era when I was diagnosed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I remember the big machines, and when you checked your blood sugar, you have like the big machines, and you have to put the blood onto the. I'm drawing a blanket. I had to check my blood sugar on like not a huge machine, but a relatively large machine.
And it needed a lot of your blood too.
Yeah. It wasn't like now where, you know what I mean? You don't, some people don't have to check their blood sugar because they have the CGMs.
Right.
But like, I don't have one yet. But so right now, I mean, the amount of blood is like significantly smaller, less painful.
Yeah. The leaps in technology are stunning, and especially with, you know, with what we're talking about here, the amount of blood size that you need to fill that test strip has gone from, you know, a gallon basically to like basically, you know, there's the one my daughter's using now, she's using the Contour Next one, and you barely even like bump the thing into the blood, and it's like, I'm working, and even if you don't get enough, it doesn't ruin the test strip. You just touch it again and get a little more. Whereas there's some, if you put blood on, but it wasn't enough to read, like that would ruin the strip. And the meter you're talking about, my friend Mike had one when we were 16. It was a long time ago, and it was like literally the size of a brick. And, you know, like you couldn't travel with it. You couldn't take it anywhere. It just sat in your house. And that's when you tested your blood sugar if you were near it and you thought to do it. It's just a different world. And when you're 7 and somebody's like, look, we got to open a vein, you know, so that we could get enough blood out of here. It's got to be incredibly off-putting. I know that Arden just got her A1C done by fingerstick the other day. And, you know, that needs a large sample. And she was put off by that. She's like, well, afterwards, she's like, wow, that's a lot of blood that woman took. And it's her perspective's different now.
Absolutely. And even like, so to touch back on that too, so even like being 7 and like, can you imagine having, like as a child having died? So like I used to carry my like insulin, not my insulin, but like my needles, my syringes, my little pricker things. I used to carry all of those in a like the little pencil box. Do you remember the plastic pencil boxes, like with the different colored tops?
I do.
I used to, so you know, that was life.
That's a slick look, Mike. I'd like to see a photo of you carrying around your pencil box with your.
Trust me, you don't want to see that.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
It might be your version of Napoleon Dynamite right there, because that's really I'm assuming now. How'd the ladies like that, by the way? Were you? I was totally shy when I first got diagnosed. Like I remember my teacher saying it was time to check my blood sugar at one point, and I told her like I want to go in the hallway and check my blood sugar. Because I just didn't want everybody to know, and I also didn't want to feel alienated from my classmates. You know what I mean? And even though, because kids won't say anything, you know what I mean? They'll just stare at you. Hey, they'll just quietly judge you, and then form a cabal later where they hate you.
Exactly. And then later on, it's like they'll ask you. But for me, I didn't want any type of extra attention on me. So I had to take extra steps, like I said, checking my blood sugar in the hallway.
You're just trying to blend when you're a kid. You know, you really are just trying to be wallpaper. You know, you're just like, don't let me be too different. And even think of all the crazy things that you avoid when you're a child. My wife is tall. She loves being tall. But when she was in middle school, she said being a tall girl was a problem because you were taller than boys, and so boys didn't talk to you. And, you know, and so she's growing up not liking that she's tall, which is something that's amazing for her. You know, like just somebody's too athletic, not athletic enough, too artsy, not artsy. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're just trying to be vanilla, right? You're just like, I hope no one looks at me, right? And you know what too, Mike? And I don't know I never know how to say something like this to a person I've never met before, because in my personal life, this wouldn't be a big deal. I don't think it's a big deal here, and I feel like you're going to handle this well. So, and I've now built it up so much that when I say it, people are going to be like, that was not a big deal. Why did Scott do that? But you're African-American, right? So you're black, right? And that's what I would have said if I knew you. I would have been like, Mike, you're a black guy, aren't you? And so did that community have different opinions about diabetes? And because I see it and hear about it a lot, like sometimes you get more, I don't know, like Southern roots, and then diabetes is thought of in a different way. And I hear a lot. I don't know if you heard it, but I interviewed Anthony Anderson, a number of months ago now, and he was talking about his father having diabetes. He was talking about him having type 2 back then, but that his father had just resolved himself to the fact that basically he had the sugar and his life was going to be shorter, and that was all he could do about it. Like that he couldn't really do anything about it. And I see that from different cultures running this podcast over and over again. There are some places in the country or ethnic backgrounds or something, they all treat it like a little differently. Some people stigmatize it. Some people embrace it. So I was wondering if you had anything like that, just, coming from a Black community. All right, a little treat. I'm going to do all of the ads without stopping. And as you heard at the beginning of the show, I'm tired. So this is going to go, you got to guess not well. The Dexcom G6 continuous glucose monitor is one of my favorite pieces of diabetes technology. And I can say in all honesty that without it, the success that we have with my daughter Arden's blood sugars and her A1Cs and her variability and her stability, I don't think it would be possible. I can say that with comfort because prior to the Dexcom CGM, we were not accomplishing the things that we're accomplished now. See me just have like a little flub there? I kind of swallowed a word. It's okay. I'm going to keep going. So here's what you need to do. You go to dexcom.com/juicebox and get started today with the G6 continuous glucose monitor. Why? You're asking me why? It's fine. I'll tell you. Because you'll be able to see loved ones' blood sugars remotely on an Android or iPhone, right? Is their blood sugar going up? Is it going down? How fast is it moving? What's the number? It's because the Dexcom is FDA approved for 0 finger stick treatments. That's not bad, right? And what else? Dexcom. Ooh, we work on pre-bolusing and temp basiling and stopping high blood sugars and cutting off lows and all kinds of cool stuff with the data that comes back from Dexcom. Now, when we do stuff with our Arden's insulin, like I'm just talking about, that happens through Arden's Omnipod tubeless insulin pump. Now, the coolest thing about Omnipod is that they'll give you a free, no obligation demo. Okay? You understand what I'm saying? You go to myomnipod.com/juicebox, fill in a tiny bit of information about yourself, and Omnipod will send you out a pump to try on and wear. It's non-functioning, so you can't, hurt yourself with it, but you can figure out what it's like to live with the Omnipod. So just imagine yourself sitting on the sofa, staring at a wall, sitting in the kitchen, staring at a wall, sitting in your bedroom, staring at a wall, and you'll get to see what it's like to wear the Omnipod while you're staring at that wall, right? COVID-19 got you in the house. Good time to work on your blood sugars. Great time to work on your diabetes technology with Dexcom and Omnipod. Now, once in a while, you're going to need to test your blood sugar with a meter. And for those of you who don't have the Dexcom, this is happening all day long. Why not get great information back, like the information that comes from the Contour Next One blood glucose meter? It is the most accurate and easy to use meter that my daughter has ever had, and she's had a number of them over the years. At contournextone.com, you can learn more about the meter, about the app that you can use with it if you'd like, and you can find out if you're eligible for a free, no obligation. Damn, that was Omnipod. You'll find out at contournextone.com, you'll find out if you're eligible for a free meter. You can actually fill in some information and find out. I told you, I'm not editing and I'm not stopping. Here we go. They used to be dancing for diabetes, but now they're touched by type 1. same organization. They just want you to understand they're not just about dancing. They realized maybe people think we're just about dancing, but they're not. They do so much more. And you can find out about what they're doing. Find out about, that isn't right. And you can find out more about what they're doing at touchedbytype1.com. No, .org. Touchedbytype1.org. I'm almost out of music. I'm freaking out. myomnipod.com/juicebox. Dexcom.com/juicebox. ContourNext1.com. Touchedbytype1.org. Please, during these tough times, support the sponsors of the show. Let them know you're coming from here. Use my links. We got to make it through this corona thing together, people. And I mean, health-wise, obviously, but I'm talking about got to keep the podcast strong, because once we all go back to work and you jump in your cars again and walking around the grocery store, bopping out to your podcasts, this podcast needs to still be, viable. So hit up those sponsors. I'm out of breath. It was terrible. I don't usually do them like that. Like, I do one and then I'll stop and think about it for a second. I'm like, what I'm going to say about Omnipod? I'm like, boom, and I do that. And sometimes, anyway, I'm tired. Oh, wait. It's not the end of the show. It's the end of the ads. Here comes Mike. He's going to answer a question that I just asked a moment ago. I'll even re-ask it just so you know where we're at. If you had anything like that, just, coming from a Black community.
Oh my God, totally. Where do I start with this? Yeah, man. I mean, essentially, to answer your question, it is hard, specifically having diabetes and being Black, because so much of what a lot of people would call like Southern food or soul food, not the healthiest for you. You know what I mean? And so if you're Thanksgiving and, you're a 9-year-old kid, and even today, and your mom cooks candy yams, collard greens, turkey, which is protein, which is fine, cranberry sauce for the mashed potato, or not the mashed potato, for the stuffing, mac and cheese. I mean, all of that is very, very, it definitely plays a role in your diabetes, you know what I mean, depending on your nationality. It was very hard growing up, as well as, just measuring how much insulin to take and what to eat, what not to eat. I have a friend also who I went to college with. I won't say his name, but he actually told me that he had type 1 diabetes. And the reason why he told me was because he saw me in class taking my inhalable insulin one day. And he pulled me aside and he was like, hey, I got it too. And I was like, oh, cool. I was like, so, what's your A1C? Do you test? And he was like, no. He was like, I don't. He was just like, essentially like, it is what it is. And I'm not going to, check my blood sugar and this and that. So that was disheartening. And to touch on your other point, it's hard. You know what I mean? Because a lot of people do feel hopeless, like you stated. Like, a lot of people do feel that this is what it is. This is my life, and I have to take pills or I have to take shots, and I'm going to die at 50. And I've accepted that. I'm just one of those people who, unfortunately for my diabetes, I'm a fighter.
Yeah, you're not going out like that, right? So
no, and I've always been like that. So I once I accepted that I had it, I buckled in. You know what I mean? And I made adjustments to my life, and I'm still constantly trying to improve. I'm still trying to better myself and speak to different people and get their advice, and you know what I mean? But I can't go out. I can't just let diabetes take me over.
Yeah. No, give me a second on that, because it's sad when you hear somebody say, like, this is my lot in life and that's the end of it. And I think sometimes that becomes generational, right? Like, some things, you don't learn from your parents as much as your parents got a little bit from their parents, who got a little bit from their parents, and eventually it just becomes a feeling. And it's sort of like anything else. Like, you can get generational wealth, you can have generational poverty, you could have a generational malaise about taking care of your health. There's like these ideas that build over time. I'll tell you what I see recently is there's a spike in type 2 diabetes in the Indian population. But their diets are so carby with, rice and things like that. And when I speak to people from that culture privately, it's funny how they say, look, I know this isn't good for me, and then this is the sentence that throws me off. This is how we eat. Like, it's a rule. You know what I mean? Like, hey, I'm Indian. I have to eat like this. And our food is like this. And I said to a friend, I was like, there's other food, right? Like, you could just, you don't have to do that. You don't have to soak baked beans in brown sugar and honey before you eat them. You could just eat the beans, Mike. You know what I mean? Like, and so I get that generationally, it builds and people start thinking of, like, it's not Christmas without this, or it's not my birthday without that. But man, you don't get Christmas in your birthday if you're not alive. So,
And absolutely. And not even to throw anybody else under the bus, but to touch on that too. So like, sometimes, even your family members will be like, oh, come on, you can have some of this cake, or, you know what I mean? Or you can,
and you know where that comes from.
Insulin and
right. But you know where that comes from, Mike? It's they feel bad for you. And then they skip over. This is my opinion, but I think when someone says, come on, you can do it, what they mean is, we're all eating cake and you're making me uncomfortable and I feel bad that you can't have some. So why don't we all just ignore for a second that your situation and you eat the cake so that we can all feel like this is normal and happy. And I don't mean to say that if you have type 1, you can't have cake. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that, listen, if it's a cake soaked in, liqueur, soaked in this, soaked in that, you just look at it and go, you know what, I'm just going to stick with what I got here because this is just, I don't know how to bolus for this, then I get that. If you don't want to eat it, but I really do think that's what happens. That when you break from the norm in a group, you become the problem, even though that's not true. You know what I mean? Like, it turns into a pack mentality. Like, there's more people there who think you should eat the cake than think you shouldn't, and so suddenly you're wrong for not eating it. And that's a weird, human nature thing, but it could pressure a person into doing something they don't want to do. And you just sound like you're the one who goes, no, thank you. And I don't mind being a little different. How did you go from the kid who wanted to take his pencil box in the hall to somebody who didn't mind if people saw?
It got easier the older I got. I'll say that, you know what I mean? Because as you elevate, as far as schooling goes and different things, like once I got to college, it was just kind of like, I see these people every now and then. I don't see them all the time. If they have questions, they can ask me. I also think that having a community that embraced diabetes, specifically I'm referring to the Instagram community of hashtag T1D or type 1 diabetes, that were, they would post inspirational stuff and really rally behind people who are going through the same thing that you are. It really encourages you and motivates you to, you know what I mean, put the word out there.
I do, yeah. No, I see it constantly, the power of sameness, I guess, or community, whatever you want to call it, just looking up and seeing somebody who's got your struggle. It's huge. Like it really is impactful. I always think of this podcast sort of first and foremost about like management, but I get so many notes from people who are like, yeah, I manage fine. And what you do is cool and I incorporate some of it. But for me, I listen to this podcast. I hear Mike on there. Mike's the only person with type 1 diabetes I've ever heard speak out loud that isn't me. And it's interesting how it can be so many different things for so many different people. Like, I feel like it's one thing, somebody sees it another way, somebody else sees it another way. Instagram's the same way. Like, you don't know. You put a picture up because you have in the back of your head, this is going to impact somebody like this. You have no idea how it's really going to help them. It's really fantastic, actually.
Right. And that's something that we need to highlight as well, too, I feel like. Because oftentimes, and I'm not condoning this either, social media is looked at as a negative thing, which at times it can be. But again, in my mind, it's a tool. So you can use it to, you know what I mean, post pictures of you doing stuff and you putting people down or sharing terrible news about different events going on in the world, or you can use it to inspire.
Yep.
You can use it to motivate. You can use it to, you know what I mean, touch someone who you might not have been able to previously just based on geographic location.
Yeah. No,
you know what I mean?
100%. And listen, there's always going to be, you know, it's easy to say there's always going to be people who are negative and there's always going to be people that are positive, but I've seen somebody who's negative be a positive person. I've seen a positive person be a negative person. I think people are just at different spots in their life. They use the relief that they have. I usually think of people who are, you know, kind of being kind of shit online as just there's somebody having a bad day. You know what I mean? Now I got to bleep out that because I can't curse. And like I don't think this is a person. And don't get me wrong, I've seen people who just appear to be a tornado of unpleasantness and hate and everything. But it's not everybody. And to your point about it being a tool, Mike, look, if I build a house with a hammer, that's amazing. If I go next door and kill my neighbor with it, hammer's not so great anymore. And so you can decide. You can pick that hammer up and do what you want to do with it. You can use your Instagram for good, or you can use it to try to make people feel bad. I think sometimes when people try to make people feel bad, they're really just trying to make themselves feel better. And I mean, I've been in this space a really long time, and I've had people come at me oddly. You know, there are groups of people who don't like that I talk about just, listen, just use the amount of insulin you need. And so those people every once in a while flare up and they're like, you're killing people by telling them they can eat whatever they want. I'm like, I said, I didn't tell anybody to eat anything. I just told them, understand how to use your insulin. Like, I don't care what you do with that knowledge once you have it, but I think you should understand how insulin works. And what I have found in those scenarios is there's people aren't like, I've heard people talk about them and call them angry and, like mob mentality and stuff like that. And I'm like, no, you don't understand what they're really doing. They got to a spot in their life with diabetes where they couldn't find something that worked. And they finally did. They found this thing that worked for them. And you have to understand that what they believe in their heart they're doing right now is saving you and other people. They think they're saying, look, this works. My A1C is amazing now. I don't have spikes like this, et cetera, et cetera. You should pay attention to this. Moreover, this guy over here who's talking about be bold with insulin, he's killing you. You know what I mean? Like it's their opinion. And don't get me, if they find my podcast before they find that, they might be a person who's like, hey, just eat whatever you want if you use the right amount of insulin. You don't know. They found something that saved them. And they feel, everybody who's listening right now knows what I'm trying to say that I can't get the words out on. It's like you feel like you have the ability to save someone. And it feels important to do, So I don't even take those people as angry. I honestly take them as passionate. And they get to the point where they're like, look, you're not listening to me. You have to listen to me. This is really important for you. So I don't know, but I hear you. I'd like to see a little more flowers and sunshine, Mike, myself, I think there's a way to put your message out there in a positive way. And I love anybody who does it. Is that what you try to do with your Instagram?
Absolutely. And I'm glad that you know what I mean, you said all that. So as far as me, like diabetes, I looked at my diabetes and I really thought to myself, like a lot of times people hear this word and it's a negative thing. Mm-hmm. There's a negative spin on it. You know what I mean? And that's, a lot of my life is kind of based around turning negatives into positives. So even amongst, even being Black to a certain degree, certain things have a negative connotation around being Black, but my whole thing is trying to change that and spin it, which is why I started Glucose Gang, which is honestly, it's a brand. It's a brand that I started. It's something that I've been trying to do I had the concept for like a year, 2 years, mm-hmm. and I just never really did anything with it. But it's a brand and it's just, obviously it's raising awareness about type 1 diabetes, but I'll just read you the back of what I have here on the card. So for me, it's just about redefining what is negative and creating something positive. And I put like, we are, fighting against the odds even when they are not in our favor. And that could be for anything. Obviously, this is specifically related to diabetes and type 1, because we are against the odds. And, people, oh, my limb fell off, or I have numbness in my toes. And we are fighting against the odds, but we're not giving up.
Yeah.
And that's really what Glucose Gang stands for. And so, I think that staying motivated and doing different things. Speaking of tools, let me ask you, have you heard of a book called Bright Spots in Landmines?
Oh, Adam Brown.
Yeah.
Yeah, Adam's been on a couple of times on the podcast.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
If you talk to him next time, if you could please just thank him for me, because I read this book and you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It really did make a difference. Just some of the techniques, you know what I mean? The chia seed pudding and, you know what I mean? Yeah. Exercising and bolusing. I mean, this guy's great. Adam is really a good guy. I also have because I feel like diabetes affects my psyche sometimes.
Yeah.
So I also have a friend who got me what's known as an awesome journal. And essentially it's just a book where, it's blank and you write why you're awesome. Just whenever you feel like it, if you feel down, if you feel like you're going to start a great day, whenever, if you're feeling like you need to get something off of your chest, this awesome journal has really helped me as well, psychologically with the diabetes, and just encouraging myself and really trying to, get into the right mind frame. Because oftentimes with diabetes, it affects not only our body, but also our psyche.
Oh no, I think a lot. Yeah, I think it does a lot. So that book is like your own hype man. It's just you can hype yourself in that book. Yeah. Just be like, there's so much science behind that idea of just saying something positive, moving in a positive direction, believing in something even when it doesn't seem like it's true. There's all different ways of saying it. I think AA says fake it till you make it, right? You pull out a book and be like, Mike, here are the things that are great about you. Let me just remind myself all the things that I am, or that I've done, the things that I dream about or I want to be. And, it's pretty much the equivalent of your guy standing in the corner, grabbing you by the shoulders and yelling, get in there and kill him. You can do it. And you're just, I always say that football must be the easiest sport to coach, because really in the end, after you've gone over the X's and O's, your job is just to whip everyone into a murderous rage and send them out onto a field, right? And so that they can, fling their bodies into things that if they were thinking about it, they'd go, I don't really want to do that because I think I'm going to hurt my head. But you can jack people up to a spot where they believe in themselves, and then they actually can perform at a level that might not be, what their norm is. And so when you're doing that, what leads you to that journal? Because I think you and anyone else living with type 1 are uniquely qualified to answer the question, what? And so my real specific question is, day after day, living with type 1, making your boluses, trying to keep your blood sugar in a spot, thinking about your foods, worrying about is my second uncle, pissed at me for not eating this cake, all that stuff going on. How does it start to impact you as the days build on each other? How do you get to the point where you're like, I need this journal right now? It's kind of a deep question. I'm sorry to throw it on you, but I'm looking for you know what I mean? How does it feel? Does it feel like you're carrying a box and someone puts another box on top of it and that just keeps happening to the point where you think I can't hold all this? Or does it hit you in a wash? Do you feel like you're doing great and then all of a sudden you don't? Can you put it into words, I guess?
I would say, yeah. It's similar to what you said. It's it comes in waves. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Sometimes in life you'll be doing great. Everything will be fine. It's, birds and champagne and family's good, everything is great. And then the next minute, you know what I mean? Oh, something happened at work. Oh, my girlfriend broke up with me. Oh, my blood sugar's out of whack now because my hormones are a mess. Like it comes in waves.
Right.
And it's just the book really, the Awesome Journal really is a reminder to, you know what I mean, keep going. Just to lock in and understand that these things happen, and even the good times will pass, and then they'll be bad, but then they'll also be good again.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? One of my heroes, one of the people that I look up to, not the most, but one of the top 3 people that I look up to is a guy named Nipsey Hussle. He recently passed. I'm sure you heard back in March, the end of March. And his thing was, one of his mottos was just like, again, life is it's a marathon. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So there's going to be some bumps. There's going to be some bruises. There's going to be some slip and falls. There's going to be ankle pain. But there's also going to be victory. There's also going to be, winning and being surrounded by your family. There's life comes. This is how life is. And
nothing lasts forever.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say nothing lasts forever. It's just, it's I don't know why some people learn it in a way that they're able to endure the bad times and get back to the good times. I don't know if you have to be brought up in it to know it, or if you had to have a good role model that had it happen. I grew up completely broke. Like, we didn't have 2 cents. And I just saw my mom just never gave up. Like, no matter how bad anything looked, I never saw her give up. And when she got overwhelmed, she'd cry, and then she'd do it again. You know what I mean? Like that's what I got to see. And when I became an adult and I got into the world and started, working and having money and then not having it and getting a bill you didn't think you could pay and things like that, I eventually said to myself, you have these worries, and then inevitably you always find a way out of them. Like, always. So why when it's happening, see it as this horrible thing? Like, this is going to kill me. Like, why would I expect this thing is going to kill me? It hasn't killed me the last 50 times. You know what I mean? Like, at what point do I say to myself, this is the part where it's hard. I need to do this, and this to get back to the part where it's not. And so I just sort of adopted that idea, like that, I know this is going to work out because traditionally and historically it works out. So I'm going to stop worrying about it. Now, that might not be easy for everybody. Some people have, real like anxiety and depression issues that would maybe stop them from being able to make that leap. But for everyone else, you're alive, man. You wake up every day. Stop acting like it's not going to happen. You know what I mean? Like, it is. The sun's going to come up. All the isms that you've ever heard in your life are true. And, instead of wallowing in something that feels terrible, just look forward to the part where it'll be over and you can move on. It just makes sense to me. I love that you said that. And to your question, I actually do know Nipsey. My son has a wide range of music interests, and he particularly enjoys rap music on the way to and from his baseball games. So I now have a wide exposure to music I probably would not have heard at age 48, to be perfectly honest with you. And I really do like some of it. I have to tell you, my kid was off at college, and I missed him, in his first semester, and I'm out in the car by myself, and I put some Meek Mill on so I could feel like he was there.
I'm telling you.
I really wish it was like warm outside so that the windows would have been down and the people could have looked over to me and went, look at that old white guy listening to Meek. And so
but it gives you that feeling, you know what I mean? It gives you that motivation. And
it felt like he was there. Like, it really did. It felt like we were driving to a baseball game, and it made me feel better that I'd see him again soon, Yeah. I didn't think I'd I don't know, man. Like if you looked at my Apple Music, you'd be like, this is an eclectic mishmash. Oh my God. Yeah. So, but isn't it funny too, not to get too far off the path, but to talk about community, that my son's best friend is Black. And that's where some of this music was introduced to him. And so if my son doesn't meet this boy and they don't become great friends, he doesn't see this music. It doesn't expand what he thinks of as music. He probably gets, stuck in whatever his friends are listening to, doesn't get outside of it. When he gets outside of it, I listen to it. I get outside of it. I mean, don't get me wrong. There are some lyrics still, Mike, that stop me in my tracks. But I'm getting better at it. Sometimes this will make you laugh. I'll be like, hey, just now, when he said that thing about this, the G6, what is that exactly? And my kid hates it when I break down rap lyrics. He's like, stop it, you're ruining it. And I was like, I know, I'm just screwing with you.
I just want to figure it out.
Yeah. Just real quick. When he talks about his woman's thing, like exactly what is he trying to get at? And my kid looks at me like, do not ruin this for me, man. Do not make me think about what that guy is saying. And I was like, all right, I hear you. So I'm screwing with him a little bit, but anyway. But yeah, I mean, he brought something into my life I didn't know about. And I think that on Instagram, with this podcast, any other number of ways where people are trying to reach out beyond where they are to people who they may never meet in real life and say, look, I know your baked beans have brown sugar on them. Come on over here where they don't. Like, check this out. Like, I know that you're scared of this and you don't inject in public, but I think you should. I think you should, because maybe one day you'll meet a guy at college who goes, hell yeah, you have diabetes? Me too. And then you can ask him, how you handling yourself? And maybe you put it into his head, like, man, I should be paying closer attention to this. We're always touching people like that if we let ourselves. But, if you don't let yourself reach to people, then you're just in your little bubble. You're not helping them, and conversely, they can't help you.
That's the thing, man. We're all conduits, you know what I mean? And we're all, not to get spiritual and all that stuff, but we're all energy, and we're all, having a human experience. So why not encourage somebody or help somebody, or even just put something in somebody's ear? You never know how it can affect them or what it can do.
You really don't. Listen, I can't tell you. Most of the feedback I get about the podcast is overwhelmingly positive, which I really appreciate. But sometimes people find the podcast at bad moments and it strikes them really wrong. And then a couple of them are, prone to sending an email that's like, I listen to your stupid podcast and I've had diabetes forever and that's not how it works. And, this is not right and blah, blah, blah. And then 6 months later, you get another note from them. They're like, well, I listened again and I did try that pre-bolusing thing and that really did work. And my A1C did come down and, and then it goes on and on and on. And then 3 months later, the next note is like, I love the podcast so much. And I'm like, okay, I see we're on a little journey together here. And, but if you don't, so I guess my point is that you can't always expect a big smiling thank you back from somebody when you reach out. Sometimes you just have to be able to say to yourself, what I said didn't reach that person this time. Maybe it will one day. Maybe it won't. I've done what I can do and feel good about that and move on. And, to bring it kind of back around to what I said earlier, I'm sure when low carb diet people are attacking me, they feel the same way. It hurts, by the way, if you're listening, guys, but I can take it. And, but I'm just trying to do what you're trying to do. You know what I mean? Like, I found something that works and I'm just trying to share it with people. What they do with it after that, I'm not in control of, but at least it's there. And I mean, you said it a second ago, like, Mike, I'm the least religious person you'll ever meet, but I don't even know if I think about spirituality, to be honest with you, but I am driven every day by what I've seen this podcast do. And I try really hard every day to move it to someone else, whether it's by recording one, editing one, putting it up, having a private conversation with somebody. I can't even show, if I tell people, I talk to people privately and all that does is make more people come. I'm telling you, I'm going to have to get one of those like deli tickets where you take a number. You know what I mean? Like pretty soon, I'm not going to be able to live my life. There's times like I'm in bed. My wife's like, what are you doing? I'm like, this woman's just got a question about preborn justice. She's like, it's midnight. I'm like, well, I mean, she seems upset, you know, and like, it's hard to stop doing. Like once you've had a good impact on somebody, it's difficult to just flip the switch and not do it again. You know what I mean?
Absolutely right, Scott.
So, Mike, are you trying to move? So, when you say tell me your hashtag again. And
so you can find me on Instagram at glucose GLUCOS gang GANG Mike. And then I'm on Facebook too, but I'm more so on Instagram. But you can, if anybody has any diabetes related questions or anything really, man, I'm on Instagram a whole lot. I'm trying to get Glucose Gang as a brand up and off the ground. So Scott, my friend, I will send you a t-shirt.
Oh.
You will definitely be in the next round. And I'll also send one for your daughter as well. I just need you guys' sizes.
Oh, you're very nice.
You guys can join the gang. And yeah, that's where you can find me.
Cool. I hope people reach out and, you can broaden what you're doing and reach more people with, you being positive and sharing your story. It's all just incredibly important. And not enough people stick with it, by the way. I'm talking to everybody out there who has this. Like everybody comes out of the chute. They're like, I've got an Instagram. I'm doing this. I'm like, yeah, go get them. And then, when they don't talk to 1 million people in the first month, they're like, what a waste of time. I'm like, no, it's not. You really, for everyone out there who thinks that they have something to offer someone else, please know that in 2007, my blog reached 110 clicks a month. That was 110 clicks a month. I guarantee you that while Mike and I were talking here, 1,000 people downloaded the podcast. Do you know what I mean? Like, and so it doesn't all happen at once. You have to have something real to say. You have to stick with it. You have to say it when you think no one's listening, because they're listening. They're just not getting back to you. And you have to believe in it. And if one day you say to yourself, wow, this really didn't work, right on. Like there's no shame in walking away from it. But if you see it building, even if it's building slower than you want it to, if it means something to you, stick with it, because one day it could be one day it could be the most popular diabetes podcast online. You know what I mean? And I didn't intend that when I started. So you never know where things go. So I want to just encourage everybody, if you're in Mike's mindset of helping people, keep going. Be positive. Keep going. Don't give up. I will say this too at the end, Mike. There's recently was an article recently where a writer said something kind of terrible about testing in public. And so by the time people hear this, it will have happened months and months and months ago. In the old school sort of diabetes community, that would have been met with a lot of positive explanation. Hey, no, this is why you're, off on this. Let me explain this to you. Let me explain that to you. In 2019, this person got kind of jumped a little bit, like, internet jumped. And I have to admit, like, I heard a kind of an OG, diabetes blogger say, I'm disappointed that this is how the community responded to this. This isn't how we used to do this. And I have to admit, I agreed a little bit. Like I get that it's upsetting, but just lashing out at people is not the way. Like it's easy to say you should educate, and that'll elevate. And I think that's right. And I get that sometimes it's angering, but trust me, I've seen this for, I'm coming up on a decade and a half here with this. Yelling back at somebody's, it's not going to do anything. Like it falls on deaf ears. So if you just keep putting good information out there, hopefully more and more people will pick it up, and less people will say something stupid,
Absolutely. And I think too, it's, how many times have you heard this? It's not what you say, it's how you say it. You know what I mean?
I'm a huge believer.
I definitely believe that. So, you know what I mean? They could have said what they said. It's just maybe they should have crafted it a different way. And, again, I'm not anybody to judge anybody. I'm sure I've said some off the wall things to some people before, but
Me too.
Just putting that out there.
No, hey, if you have another minute, it's so funny you said that, because Because just last night, my son was with me when I was talking to somebody about diabetes, somebody who's got no idea about the things we talk about on this podcast, who's just living meter and, meter and pen. And so we sat and explained all this stuff, and we're driving home, and my son said, "How do you resist the urge not to say to him, like, just get the glucose monitor?" And like, you know what I mean? He's like,
Yeah.
right? And I was like, well, I said, people don't hear that. And nobody needs me telling them what to do. Like, my best bet here is to give them an honest assessment of what I think the technology does. And they're going to need to decide. Like, you can't just thrust things on people. But my kid's 19. He's like, just tell him to do it. And I'm like, yeah, it doesn't work like that, And I said, I know it makes sense, right? Like we have all this data over all these years. We know what it does. We're sitting there with, a couple of days removed from my daughter's last A1C that was like 5.5. And I can tell you it's because of the data.
Right.
You're very nice. Thank you. But it's because of the data. It's like I can make good decisions based on the data. And this person that we're talking to doesn't have that data back, and therefore it's difficult for them. They could afford it. They have insurance. They wouldn't mind wearing it. And they're just understandably averse to just trying something new. And I think that's, it's a good lesson for everybody out there who's trying to help somebody else, is that all you can really do is be, you put up an example and hopefully somebody will see it. It's no different than parenting or anything else in life. You can't make people do things they're not ready for. You can't make people do things they don't understand or they're scared of. The best you can do is help them be comfortable, show them why it's important, and hopefully they'll come to it, and if they don't, you did your best. That's all. So I love what you're doing, Mike. I really appreciate that you're out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. It's been a pleasure.
Don't forget to check out Mike on Instagram at GlucoseGangMike. Thank you so much to Dexcom, Omnipod, Touched by Type 1, and the Contour Next One blood glucose meter for sponsoring this episode of the Juicebox Podcast. I hope you guys are all doing well, getting along as best you can with your family as you're living so close in quarters. I'm going to try to take a nap. But first, Dexcom.com/juicebox, myomnipod.com/juicebox, ContourNext1.com, and touchedbytype1.org. Check them out if you get a chance.